Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles, and I welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and where we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we have another interesting episode for you guys that you definitely want to stick around for. But before we get into it, make sure you go ahead and hit the subscribe button. We're trying to get to 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and we really appreciate it if you help us hit that goal. Anyway, let me get into this topic here. So going into this season, there were a few teams out there that had a lot of high expectations by us, the media, and the public, right? There was a few teams. You had the Brooklyn Nets, you had the Milwaukee Bucks, and of course, certainly, you had the Los Angeles Lakers, right? The Lakers, however, during the offseason made a plethora of moves, right? They made a bunch of different moves. They acquired Trevor Ariza. They acquired DeAndre Jordan. I think they got Dwight Howard back. They got Carmelo Anthony. But the biggest move that they were able to make this offseason was the acquisition of Russell Westbrook, and they traded away a lot of their depth. And when the trade initially happened, I was one of the people out there that had some reservations about this trade. Now, let me just say this. There were a lot of people out there that didn't, right? A lot of people automatically assumed that they were going to be heading to the NBA championship. Certainly Vegas felt that way, and a lot of people out there felt that way, that okay, because of the star power, Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis, and LeBron James, that this team was automatically going to become world beaters. But I didn't personally think that Russell Westbrook was a good fit for this team for a few reasons. Number one, I didn't think he was a reliable enough shooter from the perimeter. Why do I say that? Over the last few seasons, for example, last season, although he shot 44% from the field, he's a 31% three-point shooter. And the Lakers, looking at that team, one of the things that they did need, although they were a good defensive team, was they needed some shooting, right? And they needed some spacing, right? And if you're playing on the court with a player like LeBron James, who is not the best of shooters, he's sort of like in the middle of the pack. You have Anthony Davis, who usually drifts out there to shoot, but he's usually shooting mid-range jump shots. Then you're going to need somebody else to provide some spacing. Otherwise, if Westbrook is not the guy that's given the spacing, then most likely other players are going to have to pick up the slack. So I had some concerns about that. So number one, he's not a reliable shooter, and of course, he's not a very good free throw shooter. And I've never seen him play off the ball successfully. Right, successfully if he wasn't attacking a basket, and that was just something the Lakers are not willing to do, because the Lakers have a lot of size. If you look at what the Houston Rockets did when Russell Westbrook was leading the NBA with points in the paint, they ended up trading away Clint Capella, and that was just not something the Lakers were willing to do. So I had some questions in my mind about that, and also the fact that he's not a very good decision maker. For someone that has averaged a triple-double on multiple seasons, he just doesn't seem to be a person that really takes care of the basketball. And for whatever reason, he doesn't really know when to make the right play at the right time. And going into this season, the Lakers started off in, it was very bumpy. I don't think they won any preseason games. And after 20 games, I think they had a 10-10 record, which is a 500 record. And as we currently speak, the Lakers have played 28 games with a 15-13 record, and it seems to be out there. It seems to be now the case that some people in Lakers management are exploring possible trade scenarios that include Russell Westbrook. I want to quickly say something here. Early in the season, I threw out some trade scenarios, and some people got angry at me. I threw out the possible scenario of swapping Russell Westbrook for Kyrie Irving. People laugh, oh, what are you trying to do? Sabotage the Lakers? Blah, 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 blah. You're trying to sabotage the Lakers. Well, a person out there that some of you guys seem to think is some type of genius, some type of sports supernova. Nick Wright just the other day threw out the idea of trading Russell Westbrook for possibly Kyrie Irving or Damian Lillard. Right? So apparently trading Russell Westbrook is not such a bad idea. So I said that originally, and people were laughing at me. Trust me, if Laker fans, I know it, if Laker fans could have a healthy Kyrie Irving that was able to play, they would take him 10 out of 10 times over Russell Westbrook. You know that, I know that, we all know that. Anyway, there's an article that I want to get into here from CBS Sports where they really discussed this idea of Russell Westbrook potentially being traded or something or being something that the Lakers are exploring. So before we go too far, this is like our famous phrase now. A lot of people love this phrase. I don't know why. Before we go too far, we're going to get into the article, and we're going to come back and give you guys our thoughts. So let's get into the article here. Now, the article starts off with the headlines. Lakers have reportedly discussed trading Russell Westbrook internally, but that doesn't make a deal likely. Russell Westbrook was a questionable fit with the Los Angeles Lakers from the moment he was acquired ahead of the 2021 NBA draft. And thus far this season, those concerns have been somewhat justified amid a disappointing 15-13 start. Rumors of a shakeup have been inevitable for weeks, and now they're finally starting to trickle in. According to Bleachers Report, Jake Fisher, the Lakers have had internal discussions about trading Westbrook given his poor fit with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. This comes a day after the Athletic Shams reported that the Lakers are interested in Ben Simmons. Westbrook would need to be in such a deal for financial purposes. Of course, considering a trade and executing one are two different things. Westbrook is owed $91 million over this season and next season, and there are a few players in all of basketball who would be used to match a salary such as this. Most of the players who could are in such rarefied air and are superstars that their teams would never want to swap for Russell Westbrook, who's 33 years old and seemingly declining. It should also be noted that James and Davis both wanted the Westbrook trade and might not be thrilled to see him dealt, even if it's in the team's best interest. For those reasons and many others, a deal is exceedingly unlikely. Westbrook has had an up and down season with the Lakers, and he is far from blameless for the team's struggles. His defensive efforts have been disappointing all season, especially in joining a team with a strong and defensive culture as the Lakers have had in recent years. He hasn't grown as much as a cutter as the Lakers likely hoped, and despite some early success as a ball screener for James, that is not a job Westbrook has embraced either. These were all predictable issues. Westbrook has both succeeded and struggled in ways, and that has generally succeeded and struggled throughout his career. He has, in other words, essentially lived up to the expectations, unless the Lakers believe he would magically change as a player in his mid-30s. That makes Westbrook a somewhat unfair scapegoat for the Lakers. His limitations as a player were apparent from the moment they traded for him, yet they still built a roster that made little sense around him. They refused to pay Alex Caruso despite knowing Westbrook's defensive weaknesses. They loaded up on ball handling guards with their back of their roster spots despite Westbrook's high usage style. They tried to play him in two big lineups without considering the drawbacks from a spacing perspective. Even if Westbrook has failed the Lakers have failed him just as badly. The Lakers made their bed when they traded for Westbrook. Now they're almost certainly going to have to sleep in it. That might mean making a meaningful trade elsewhere on the roster, but in all likelihood, Westbrook is going to stay put. For better or for worse, there just isn't any realistic way to trade him for anything that makes sense for the Lakers to become a better basketball team. So according to that article, Lakers management seemed to be interested in moving Russell Westbrook, but it's an unpopular decision between players like Anthony Davis and LeBron James. And they're going to find it very difficult to trade Russell Westbrook, to find another player that has a similar salary as he does. Now, for some of you guys that have heard some rumors out there, some people will say, well, why don't you trade for Damian Lillard? Well, Damian Lillard could possibly work. He's making about $39 million, and Russell Westbrook is making north of $40 million. So from a salary standpoint, I'm sure they'll be able to do some nip and tuck work and be able to make that work. But I just don't see Portland deciding that they'll trade away Damian Lillard for Russell Westbrook, especially aging Russell Westbrook. I think if we look at Russell Westbrook's age right now, he's 33 years old, right? And Damian Lillard is a better player than Russell Westbrook, especially from an efficiency standpoint. I don't see the Portland Trail Blazers willing to, make such a trade. And it looks to me at this point, I think the Lakers are, as an organization, I think they're beginning to regret making this trade. That's what I truly believe. And it means to me that the Lakers are going to have to win the old-fashioned way, by pretty much playing good basketball, improving their defense, and becoming more consistent. That just seems to be what's going to have to happen. It doesn't seem to me that the Lakers can spend their way out of this problem. Usually, teams that have a lot of money, when things are not going the way that they wanted to, they can just spend their money and go out there and get another player, and then boom, 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 before you know it, they're in a better situation. It seems in this particular instance, it's not going to be that easy. One, because Russell Westbrook is a very difficult player to trade. Number one, for his contract, as I aforementioned, and number two, for his style of play and his age. So that's the first problem you're having. So I don't think that is going to be as easy. Okay, let's just try to trade him and fake. No. I don't think it's something you can throw a problem you can throw your money at. It seems to me at this point they're just going to have to figure this thing out with him. They're going to have to win with this team. So the question is this: do you think LeBron James regrets asking for Russell Westbrook or welcoming him, welcoming him to the Lakers, because he was one of the people that signed up on that deal. Do you think LeBron is beginning to regret that? The second question is, do you think Anthony Davis deserves more blame? I'm not going to let this down. I'm not going to let this down because Anthony Davis was prematurely named a top 75 player when he had no business being in that list. What about Anthony Davis? What about Anthony Davis? What about Anthony Davis? He needs to get more blame. I thought you were supposed to be the guy that was supposed to take over the franchise once LeBron James got older. I thought you were supposed to be that guy, Anthony Davis. What has happened to Anthony Davis? All of these Anthony Davis supporters, why aren't you getting on your man Anthony Davis? I always knew it. This guy was not going to be the type of a player that the Lakers needed as an organization. People were busy looking at stats and they were not looking at the intangibles. And there are players out there that have great stats that are great, that also have great intangibles. Anthony Davis is not one of them. He needs to be blamed more. He needs to be blamed more because there's no reason that this team should have this type of record with Anthony Davis on the roster, a top 75 player that's 20-something years old. It is inexcusable. It is inexcusable. So Anthony Davis deserves to get more blame. Although I pose it as a question, I'm answering it. He deserves to get more blame. And finally, do you see any scenario in which the Lakers could actually move Russell Westbrook? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. Again, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Once again, this is Charles here from Dreamerspro. Wishing you guys an amazing day and catch you guys on the next episode.